I don't know what they've done to you. They've drugged you. Get out of the town. I resigned that day. And I never looked back. And I always say there's a story of a guy walking in the woods and he falls into this huge hole. And he's asking somebody, please get me out of this hole. Somebody please get me out of this hole. Nothing happens. Screaming. Finally, a guy walks up to the top of the hole, looks down. He says, hey man, throw me a ladder. Throw me a rope. Get me out of this hole. And the guy on top of the hole jumps in with him. He said, hey, you nitwit, what'd you do that for? He says, hey brother, I dug this hole. I know how to get you out. So if we're all sitting here tonight in the hole, we don't know how to get there or get out of it. Look for someone that's been in that hole. Look for someone that's been in that hole before us, which means we usually get sponsorship. We get men and women, by the way, men sponsor men, women sponsor women, and we look for them to help us climb these 12 steps. Because for me, I lived a lifetime in hell, but it took me 12 steps to get to heaven. And let me tell you, those steps weren't easy at first, because I fought, kicked, and screamed. So I had a natural God-constrictedness. And I heard a guy on a podium one time say, listen, he says, if you're struggling with that God thing, he says, I don't have to understand God as long as he has to understand me. I said, wow, made a lot of sense. I don't have to understand him as long as he understands me. I stayed clean for 16 years. I got married, met a woman, had 2 daughters, and 16 years I started a very successful gold and silver brokerage firm here. So I went from switching equities in New York, stocks and bonds, to gold and silver here. 15 to 16 years clean, I ended up having a few knee surgeries, old college injuries, and I'll never forget the first time I went for that surgery, the doctor gave me these pain pills, these opiates. And I took 2 of them, and I called them up immediately, and I said, Doc, you're never going to believe it. I'm in the bathroom taking a pee. I open up the whole bottle, they fall down. It was that fast. 16 years clean. And let me tell you what the next 3 years were like. I was buying so many oxys, I was going absolutely nuts, and I woke up one day and I couldn't move. I was out of pills. The guy come over to my house and he says, hey, I could help you. A friend of mine says this. He lays out a line of heroin. And that was it. Got hooked on heroin. And within 3.5 to 4 years, I ended up bankrupting a multi-million-dollar corporation. I got divorced from the woman that I loved. And the kicker was, I was indicted for money laundering and conspiracy to commit wire fraud and sentenced to 60 months in federal prison. And if you've never been to federal prison, I certainly don't recommend it. It's not a place you want to do. I ended up having to do 36 months, 11 days, 7 hours, and 6 minutes. And I walked in and I met my roommate, my cellie. He's a black guy from Chicago. He's a high-ranking gang member. Tatted up head to toe, missing a tooth. I thought, we have a lot in common. This is going to be fun, right? This is my bunkie. Like I said, I want to get to know a man beneath his skin. And I was one of 4 inmates out of 1,000 that got to leave the institution a couple times a month to go speak at business ethic conferences and colleges and universities. And I would always take him with me because he asked me that I would help him speak publicly. I taught him how to read and write. But he taught me a lot about life. He taught me about understanding stuff I never thought about. How to bring life back down, understand the value of the dollar, the value of a pillow, things that I've taken for granted for my whole life. And I always say that if we're fortunate enough to get this thing called sobriety, recovery, there is a responsibility that goes if we're fortunate enough to keep it. And one of these things is that I have to be as big as I can and I have to continually carry this message to other people. And that's the only way I get to keep this thing. I got to do gigs like this. And I'm fortunate enough to speak around the country on this pernicious disease that is killing people on a daily basis. We're up to 200 people a day losing on the opioid epidemic, which I'm very involved in. My buddy from my old cellie up in federal prison sent me a video about a month and a half ago that he spoke at Princeton University. And if I tell you I was bawling, I couldn't hold it, we were just looking at this video instead of in front of several thousand people that he is putting on a violence prevention, that he was asked by the city of Chicago to do this. And it's the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. Going to federal prison, I had two daughters. Let me tell you what happened with them. My daughters were in junior high and high school. And the effect that this had on them, I didn't know how to go about it. My case was a high-profile case, and it was written in papers. It was talked about. And my younger daughter she's an athlete. She plays Division I volleyball down in Florida. This had a big effect on my kids. It really did, because to watch them go through something like this and know that their dad is a good guy who had a bad disease, just like all of us, we're really good people. We got this bad disease though, and this disease is a killer, and it is a killer, and it will kill us if we don't get it into check, because we don't know if we have another chance to go back out there. My daughters wrote a letter, as well as many people, to the judge asking for a lighter sentence before I got sentenced. The judge went below the guidelines anyway. And as a result, my kids would have to drive up and visit me 3 hours away. And as a dad, you look and see, what did I do to my kids? What did I do? When I got out of prison, I knew I was going to make this right. I knew that I had a responsibility to do the right thing in life. And I got involved in several nonprofits and working really with state senators in the opioid epidemic, and made my life about helping other people. Because the first 16 years, it was about myself. There's a three pieces of recovery. It's mind, body, and spirit. And I was missing the spiritual piece of this. The spiritual piece of this is about love, kindness, tolerance, understanding, patience, loving thy neighbor, right? Treating people fairly. I was in a dry cleaner last week where I live. Still live in Minnesota, in the Minnetonka area. And I watched a guy walk into the dry cleaners. And he was in there talking with this woman, berating her because he had 6 shirts. And every time I come in here, he says, the buttons are broken and I'm sick of this. And this poor young woman is sitting behind the counter, probably close to tears. And I always say, God tests us in many different ways. And I'm trying to keep my spiritual part of the program, but I'm listening to this guy berate her. And my blood is boiling. And finally, I just looked at him and I said, excuse me, dude. If that's my daughter behind the counter, you're talking like that, I'm taking you outside and beating your ass. He said, what? You don't even know me. I said, I don't have to know you. I'm watching what you're doing to this woman. I said, if you don't like the way they do your clothes, take it somewhere else. So I truly believe we have a responsibility to make a stand in life. Right, wrong, or indifferent. For me, it's important. I never made a stand. All I cared about was getting high. That's all I wanted to do, was find everything in this, everything in the dope bag, everything in the end of the bottle. Because I know that I have a mental obsession. That means once I start, I cannot stop. I don't have a shut-off trigger once I get high. And I say it's often like driving a vehicle with no brakes. I can't stop until I crash into something. And I crashed and burned too many times. But I also have a physical allergy to this. A Physical allergy, what does that mean? Well, if I'm allergic to berries, I break out in rashes and hives. When I drink and get high, I break out in spots, I say. Vegas, prison, Mexico, every single time I get high, I end up in places you can't believe, doing things I can't imagine. What it's like today is my life is so good. I drove up here with my girlfriend today and we were talking about simple things in life, understanding what life is about. And we get a chance to try to put our lives back together. And you people will walk out of here. And yes, the air is going to hit you when you walk out. And you're going to have these old thoughts in your mind. And it's what we're going to do with that. How do we curtail this when the gospel comes in and says, go get high, go get drunk, go gamble? We got to learn some exit strategies. How to hit the eject button and say, I got to get out of here. I got to pick that 400-pound phone up and call somebody. I'm going to call them before I get high rather than after, right? Is that the family section? Is there a family section? There they are. Give those guys a hand. Well, we think you guys had the problem, not us, when we came in here. And then we come up here and thank you for coming and understanding about our disease and understanding the effects that this has, because we might be the afflicted, but you are the affected. And the affected gets to work this thing in different ways. And we learn terms up there such as codependent, enabler, the hero, and different facets of this. And alcoholism is a family disease, and the recovery is a journey together. And what I've seen in many relationships and marriages is that one person starts working that spiritual program and the other person doesn't. I said, no, it's your problem. You need to take care of this. And I've seen them grow apart. But when they both work that spiritual program together, miracles happen. Absolutely miracles. Those bonds that they can keep forever. It's really a wonderful thing to see. I was talking to a guy here tonight, Mark, who's going home soon. And all I can tell you is that if I can't walk into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and talk about what's really going on, I don't have a chance. I absolutely have no chance in life. Because there is another disease called coolism. And that's a disease trying to be too hip, slick, and cool. And I've often seen many people relapse and die from this. They walk into an AA room, the wife just left them, their house is in foreclosure, they lost a job, and someone walks up to them and says, how's it going? And he smiles and says, just fine. She's unwilling to pull this stuff from the roots inside. Our responsibility is not pull the little leaves off the tree. It's to get down inside and pull this stuff from the roots. Those 12 steps allow us to go deep inside. And if I can't walk into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, and talk about what's really going on, the boys in the committee were going to go crazy. And once the boys get going upstairs, they're telling me to go get high. If I go get high, I have to go live like an animal again. That's what happens when it gets caught upstairs. I understand what it's like today. Thank God we don't shoot the wounded. Thank God we don't shoot the wounded, the people that relapse and come back. Because I'm a guy who's lived it and lived through it. A quick story. My friend was getting an award, the Twin Cities Film Festival, just recently, a few years ago. And right before that, the FBI and the DEA are putting on a movie called Chasing the Dragon. It's about doing opioids, going to prison, coming out of prison, relapsing, coming out to prison, coming out, relapsing, dying. And when the movie's over, I walk up, I said, I gotta go talk to these guys. And I walk up to these two FBI agents, a guy from Fargo, Virginia, a guy from the Minneapolis office, and the head of the DEA. And I stick my hand out and I said, hey, I'm 167-20041. The guy says, hi, Dave. I introduced myself, and I said, man, that's really, I'm a guy that's lived it and lived through it. I did federal time because of this. I understand what happens when I go back out there. I understand what it's like, the pain and the suffering. And he says, well, we'd like to do a film on a guy like you. I like film, so it doesn't, right? So the other guy asked me, he says, would you be interested in speaking